AJ, welcome to the show, my man. How's things with yourself, brother?
Hey, what's happening? All good, all set, living the life.
Yeah, I was going to say, me and you have had an amazing time trying to connect. I was scooting myself over to the studio today. I was just thinking, like, we had an issue getting our diaries to align. We then had the coronavirus outbreak. You then got stuck in a different country. So I was like, for the past 3 months, trying to get us to meet for this podcast has been it's been a fun journey.
It has been a journey for sure, man. It's crazy how, we get so caught up in our lives and in the things that we do. It just seems like two humans should be able to meet up and just have a conversation, no problem. But that hasn't been the case,
Talk to me about it. Talk to me about it. So, where are you now? I presume this is the travelers and the nomadic way of life. If something like this happens, you get pretty stuck. So I'm presuming you're stuck in a country somewhere, right?
Yes, I am stuck in Thailand, Bangkok.
I bet that's fun.
It's a familiar city for sure. I lived in Bangkok for nearly 3 years before I moved out to Bali. So it's familiar. I know what's happening, and I'm actually a homebody. I've been a massive homebody lately. So this whole lockdown thing has been amazing for me, actually. Just getting a lot of stuff done and not having to go outside. It's great.
It's played you to your strengths. I bet you've just become super productive with things, haven't you? Just knuckle down.
I know, man. Like they locked down the parks, every public place possible. So I would actually get away to sneak into parks from, like back entries because I really love nature. That's why I moved to Bali. Nature is one of the things that is a non-negotiable for me. And yeah, the city's not so much, It's not bad, but
You're similar to myself.
yeah.
But AJ, look, I'm pumped and I'm stoked about this conversation. Because we've never really had someone from your realm of work who's come in. We've had people in the individual areas. But the thing that I love about your industry and what you coach and all of the people that work and the experts in that area is how biohacking is the embodiment of everything to make the human optimal, which I absolutely love. And that's something that I'm all about in all of the areas of work that we do and in business. But AJ, look, before we step into what it is you can do and helping our audience, I always love a person's story, especially someone who's nomadic like yourself, especially someone who's now locked in a country like myself. I want to know the story of you because I think someone's genius and the strengths always lies in their backstory. So AJ,
I agree with you, man.
rundown. How did you get from where you are to traveling the world to, do you know what I mean? Helping people all over the world and working in some of the most incredible locations ever. Because I think I picked up on you at the Astana, which is one of the most stunning spots I've ever seen in the world. So give us a rundown.
It is indeed. Yeah. Well, the rundown is I was born in Lithuania. So in a town of 20,000 people. And I didn't really see the future I always kind of wanted something more and been navigating life, wanting something more. And the funny thing was that I kind of didn't know where I was going. So I ended up going into military. So that was my first step. And to kind of pedal back a little bit, I spent most of my childhood sick. I spent about 5 years straight on antibiotics. So my immune system was annihilated. My gut was destroyed. I had kidney stones at the age of 13. I had allergic asthma, mold toxicity. So everything, like just checking boxes on disease list.
Sorry about this, but how did they label that? Like, obviously at that age, the medical industry likes to throw a singular label at something, but if you've got so many issues going there, what was the diagnosis for it?
It was simply they were treating every single disease separately. They weren't looking at my really history, really. Now I look back on it and hey, it's super clear. I had mold toxicity. Allergic asthma was from mold toxicity. My immune system was super feeble. They kept giving me antibiotics. My gut microbiome was destroyed because of that, and then just kept weakening my immune system and my response, my body's natural response to fight disease. and simply just kept evolving. That disease path kept evolving, and as I said, 5 years straight on antibiotics, uh, more or less. It was just no person can actually benefit from it, really. I guess I'm 6'7" now, so that helped my height, maybe. I don't know.
I think as well, the thing that a lot of people don't understand, sorry about butting in with your story, by the way, but like
Oh, absolutely.
from
No, no
when
worries.
you're on that much medication as well, when you stop, like people don't like take into consideration like I'd call it a rehabilitation process, because like your
Yeah,
energy must have been shot, like mitochondria health must have been, you know what I mean, depleted. So a lot of the
absolutely.
time you just think, oh, it was this period of time, but then you've got the recovery or the rehab time on the back end, and that in itself can be years, especially from something like that.
For sure. And my parents, I'm grateful to my parents because, in a sense, in from one side of things, they kept giving me to the hands of the doctors, and then from the other side, my dad realized, hey, something is off. So he kind of introduced me to exercising, to kind of strengthening my immune system through movement, and healthy nutrition wasn't a thing then. I mean, when you're living in a post-Soviet Lithuania, it's not really, whatever you can get your hands on, that's, yeah, it's good. And
Oh,
yeah, and ultimately I carried it over. So back to the military, once I joined, I carried it over to my adult life. And that really wasn't, I realized that my brain wasn't working properly, it wasn't functioning, I wasn't feeling that well. And fitness, since that's what my dad kind of got me on first, I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to ha- take a deep dive into fitness. And then I ended up putting on about 50 pounds of muscle in like half a year. I was like, yeah, that's fitness is the end all be all solution to everything. And then I looked good on the outside, but felt absolutely like garbage on the inside. Then I realized that
been there,
being
mate.
fit and being healthy can't be mutually exclusive. And that is such a massive thing that people usually overlook, that they don't realize that you can look great and then be absolutely feeble and feel like crap, because the picture that you see on magazine covers and of those muscular men with 4 or 5% body fat, chances are most of them don't have any libido, their hormones are shot, and they look good, but they don't feel so good at all.
I always think like with that sort of stuff, it's because people, like, for example, if it's fat loss, people will sacrifice their health to get the body, won't they? And they don't,
Mm.
because it's a slower process. If you want to move
Right.
all the balls of health, performance, aesthetics forward together, it's going to be a slower, tweakable process, isn't it? Whereas if you just go, oh, here's a 800 calorie per day thing, you'll get the results, but you're going to feel like shit. You won't be able to raise a smile in the morning, let alone, be like be erect. It's a
Mm.
nightmare. But
For sure.
look,
Going on a
so
diet, I mean, everybody can lose weight. Everybody can lose weight. Everybody can go on a diet. It's just how lasting is it? That's a question.
exactly. So AJ, continuing with this, how did you get from this position now then to nomadic all over the world, speaking, working in incredible places? What was the connect there?
Well, I was so military. I spent as little time as possible in the military, got out as soon as I could. And then I had an apprenticeship in civil engineering because that was my background when I was studying. So I was a military officer, and at the same time, I had a civilian education, which was in civil engineering. And actually, while still in service, I was helping my fellow military service members to get healthier, to sort out their nutrition. That's when I got certified in all of those nutrition, strength and conditioning certifications. And following that, I never saw it as a career because, again, coming from Lithuania, there's no entrepreneurship. My parents are working 9 to 5 jobs and essentially graduate, get a degree, get a job type of thing. And then when I got a job as a civil engineer, I just realized how unfulfilling it was. Like I'm just working for somebody else. I'm not enjoying this. I mean, I'm challenged mentally, which is great, but that's about it. And slowly but surely, I started developing my nutrition coaching practice, and then decided to drop everything and moved to Asia. Moved to Asia to teach middle school kids maths. that was
Oh,
my
amazing.
that was my year in Thailand. First year in Thailand when I decided, hey, I'm just gonna do something completely different. Just experience something that I really enjoy doing, and yeah, picked up that, and then I was coaching people how to eat better on the side, and spent 1 year teaching middle school girls mathematics. That was great.
It's incredible. Look, I can already see like piecing your story together. Like one of your lead values as a human here is service, like service for the military, service for other people, service for the people who are in the military, service to the children. So it's always been like you've been serving people from a very young age, and that's been the biggest value of what's moved you through life. But
It's an
AJ, look, like
overarching thing for sure.
yeah, 100%. The other thing like I'd like to acknowledge you on that is as well, like there's a saying, I think you posted it as well, Joe Dispenza, which is you can't read the label when you're inside of the jam jar. And I think like
Okay.
from us in the UK, it's very like I think when we're kind of like, oh, our environment's hard and do you know what I mean? We need to kind of like break that. I think as well, coming from the country that you did as well, I think with regards to the social conditioning and that sort of aspect, I think it's a much more harder thing to move yourself through as well. So big acknowledgements to you on that as well.
I appreciate that. I actually reflected on it yesterday. Like I am coming from literally a town of 20,000 people in the middle of nowhere of Lithuania that has like a population of under 3 million. And then I mean, I definitely got lucky in a sense, simply being exposed to certain education. I mean, I got lucky to be picked to study in the United States. My family couldn't really afford that by any means, and just moving to the United States opened my horizons completely, man. Like that was the biggest step and the biggest change. Even though I kind of picked up the little piece of a puzzle, when I was in the States again, it was the same mindset: get a job, get a degree, all of that kind of stuff. And then I realized, hey, there's more to it. There's more to life than working your life away.
This is completely off the topic of where I wanted this conversation to go, but what was it? Did you know deep inside of you that there was something and you just had to give up everything and trust in that? Or sounds very similar to my own story, this.
Yeah, I never really internalized it. That's the thing. I just kind of always, I'm an adventurous soul. I don't have any problems of leaving everything and just moving to another country. And I always like traveling. I mean, I backpacked around every single country in Europe and every country in the Southeast Asian region and Central America. So it was just traveling was a big part of everything that I do now. Is just because it exposed me to different cultures. It exposed me to different understanding of people. Just knowing that one size fits all solution does not fit everybody, right?
Exactly. Look, the thing is, I love about this, and it's another prime example, and this is something that I always speak about with people when they kind of don't feel like they're moving somewhere or they don't really know what the purpose is. If you just narrow in on the things that you know you're great at or you know that you love and get you super excited, like for you, it's travel, service, and then, do you know what I mean? You just start walking more towards those things. Suddenly the path unravels itself of what you should be doing or what you're here to do. Is it, again,
Sure.
your story, it's the same thing. You only knew two things that you were clear on: service, travel. You did that, and now look at what you've achieved and where you are.
And that's the thing.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, if you just follow that without even internalizing, it's like a lot of people ask, "What do I want? What do I want from life?" It doesn't matter. Really, it doesn't. It doesn't matter because we really do have so much time to explore, and it's better to spend a decade exploring and wandering than putting yourself on a certain path and have a tunnel vision and just stick with that because that's comfortable and something that is familiar. that society pressures us into, it doesn't make sense. Once I realized that it's again, that's the realization came after execution, which is fun.
Always.
Yeah, always. And then once I realized that, and hey, that multidimensional approach which I take to my work right now, it's come from teaching, it's come from traveling, and from understanding that humans are way more sophisticated than, hey, as you said, counting calories and doing certain workouts.
The way I view two things I want to pick up on here is number one, you said something about time, and I want to get this on a platform where I can air it. Like everyone thinks that they don't have a time, and they're always in a rush. Now, for example, someone said to me the other day, they're like, "Oh, you've not got that much time." I was like, "Right, hang on. We've got people like yourself who are literally biohacking people down to a ridiculous level to help them be more, do more, have more energy to live longer." I was like, right, so if I look at things now, I'm going to live to about 100, 110. If something ridiculous doesn't happen, especially here, being in volcanoes, earthquakes, tsunami warnings, you get the drift. But
Yeah.
like, when you actually think about it, like, I don't have to, I'm not even, if that was the figure, then I'm literally just over a quarter of my lifespan. And I think that's the way that we're going, is we are actually being gifted more time. I think that's one thing to look at, is we don't actually have a good perception on time. So we're always rushing.
Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, exactly. But then the other thing that I kind of want to pick up on this is as well, is like with what you just did there, it's amazing how kind of like it's such a big leap into the unknown. And you literally had to shed the identity, you had to shed the environment, you had to follow that little twinkle of belief and just go and execute on it, and everything showed itself. And like that's just a beautiful thing in itself, which I really, even though this wasn't the topic at all of this podcast, I just think it's a message in there that people really need to hear, and maybe it might shine some light for other people.
Follow your curiosity. That's one of the things that I'm a super curious human being, and when I get interested in something, I just go so deep into that one topic, and then just completely exhaust it, and not to a point of mastery, but to a point of proficiency. And then if you're exposed to as many of those fields as possible and become proficient in as many fields as possible, whatever you do in life is going to benefit you, is going to serve you. So rather than spending a few hours on Netflix, maybe dedicate 1 hour to educating yourself on a topic that you've never explored before. And that seems interesting to you. You don't have to force yourself to do any of that. It just being guided by your curiosity is probably one of the most profound things that one can do.
Exactly.
That's my personal belief. Yeah.
And the thing that I love about that as well, it opens you up. It opens you up to new parts of yourself. Do you know what I mean? Like there's some, like this is going to cross over perfectly. Like there's some aspects I know in the biohacking world with regards to like the meditation, the breath work, things that I absolutely love and swear by now. At a period in my life, I was curious, but I was very closed-minded to do them as well. So it opens you up to new things, and you find out a lot of new things about yourself in the curiosity as well.
I'm actually with you. I remember again, in being in the military, it's a conservative environment. So any of these practices weren't really widely spoken about at all. I was not exposed to any of them. And if you, like a decade ago, if you asked me if I would be doing breath work or meditating for 10 days straight in silence, I would say that you're crazy.
Exactly.
I would definitely say no way, no chance. Who would ever do that?
Well, first things first, you can't just drop that bombshell that you've meditated for 10 days straight in silence. So you can't just throw that out there and not expect me to hook back around to that. So talk to me about that. What was that?
That was one of the most profound experiences of my life. And so you mentioned the Stana, mentioned that beautiful place in Bali, and the guy who owns the place, David, he's an avid meditator, and he's brought me on the path of Vipassana meditation. I've been practicing before that. I was practicing transcendental meditation, which is essentially mantra based, repeating the word, and that it's like a vehicle that takes you to a place with no thoughts and no mantra, and clears your head essentially. And David showed me took me on the path of Vipassana meditation, and I sat my first Vipassana, which is a 10-day meditation where you're sitting 10 hours a day. So 10 days for 10 hours a day and meditating in silence. And as I said, if I get interested in something, I go all out. So I just kind of went for it. And man, it was the most profound experience that I had, because just digging within and finding things that I never thought I could find, it just kind of reinforced the saying that everything that you have is already within you. It's just tapping into it, having the time, because we have so many distractions, right? Having the time to sit back and realize, hey, I'm capable. Hey, I can do this. This is all within me. Nobody else is planting these seeds into my head anymore. Now it's all me. Because once you like close all those tabs, they say, close all the tabs of your browser, and certain underlying conditionings start coming up. Like I would notice some hours of meditation, I would realize, oh damn, I'm doing this because of my dad does this. This doesn't even make sense. It's not me. It's my conditioning. It's my parenting. It's all of it. And realizing who you are. Exactly. I would say that this should be a prerequisite to life. I'm not even joking. Like every single person as a rite of passage should do this.
It's kind of funny actually. I was speaking with Brian Woods the other day, and we were on about how like the first time I tried to meditate, I was doing it for 2 years. Like I was just remember being sat there for like 20 minutes, just thinking. I was like, I'm doing this. And then I went to Thailand, and I ended up taking a random bike trip, and ended up in a Buddhist monk monastery or whatever you want to call it.
Nice.
And I sat with them, and when you actually do it with people proper, do you know what I mean? Like this is what amazes me about the whole 10-day thing. I can remember being sat there and. Like we had to do an hour. It's like this sounds measly compared to 10 days of 10 hours, but literally within 1 hour, I remember just it's the ultimate like form of, would you say control or letting go? I think this is a good conversation here actually. Like, because I can remember being distractions were popping up. I was constantly thinking, what time is it? How long has it been? Can you remember in school when it's like, how long have I got? I can remember constantly jumping between these things, and I remember. I stood up after about half an hour thinking it had been an hour. And it wasn't. And I just remember like looking at the clock, I was like, holy crap, I've only managed half an hour here. And it really made me realize like how uncontrolled certain things of my life was, especially my like mind, emotions, like my body was fidgety. And it really brought to light that I was like, oh God, maybe I'm not as in control as what I thought. And that was about when I was 26 or so. So yeah.
We're so distracted. That's a beauty of it that we're so distracted and we don't even realize it. Like an hour is not, it's not that big of a deal when you think about it, right? But in the beginning, when I started, I did the same thing. I would meditate for 20 minutes, and when they said, you have to sit for an hour, it's like, an hour at once? What do you mean? And then once it, in the beginning, it was just my thoughts were racing like crazy, because the whole thing is that 20 minutes is essential to close the tabs, and it's beneficial. It relaxes you. It's all good. But in order to tap into something deeper, all the magic happens after like 45 minutes. Yeah. Once you're sitting for 45 minutes in stillness, complete and absolute stillness, those last 15 minutes, sometimes they're painful, sometimes they're unpleasant, but that's where the magic happens. And I've kept my practice. I do an hour a day, most days. And on top of other biohacks, and I combine a lot of things which we have to cover, I guess.
And that's what we're going to go into. What I always try and say to people, I love the analogy of this. We just did a 10-day event. I remember saying, I was like, I need to write this down because I think it's perfect. Like if you try and seek clarity or reflection in a pan of boiling water, you're never going to get it. But I think the beautiful thing is with meditation, you allow the water to sit, and then you can see through it, and then you can gain the clarity and see through it. And I use that. I think that's a really good way of looking at it. But AJ, look, let's move into this, because this is a big ass topic. So first things first, a lot of our audience will be new to this. We've got people in a multitude of sectors, from the entrepreneur to the corporate. But I think this is something that everyone needs to look into. and not just focus on the two-dimensional path, which a lot of people do. So just like, this is the way I look. Now I need to focus on my mind. Like, how do we bring it all together? So AJ, what is biohacking? Let's start there. Let's break it down.
Okay, so let's start with biohacking is essentially optimizing your biology to work for you, not against you. Because with all the exposure that we have from the environment and stressors, everything that is coming, the biological load from the outside, from non-native magnetic frequencies to pollution to food quality, pretty much everything is loading our biology so much that just to get to that ground zero, to reach homeostasis, we already need to show some proactive measures. So be proactive to reach that ground zero. To go beyond that, it's even more work. So most of us are actually not only aren't neutral, but we're in the negative, speeding up our process of aging rather than at least moving with our biological age and being ahead of it. So that's essentially biohacking in the nutshell.
Yeah. So what does it address? So with regards to biohacking, because I understand when I look at it, I just think I'd love to know if there's more to this. Is it kind of like you go mindset, movement, environment, breath, there's nutrition, there'll be stress management. It's encapsulating all the pieces of the puzzle, isn't it? And bringing it together. Am I correct?
Yeah, when I realized, absolutely. When I realized that biohacking, a lot of people treat biohacking as a shortcut. And for example, some of them go get nutrient IVs to recover faster from hangover. It's like, that is not, I'm sorry, that is not, I'm sorry, that is not quite biohacking there. I mean, it is, but at the same time, when it comes to biohacking, for me personally, I always say that fundamentals first, fancy stuff second. So if you're building the house on on a porous foundation, then anything that if a few things go wrong, so you're stressed, you're deprived of sleep, you didn't eat well, everything, your whole house falls over because you don't have the strong foundation that you built that on. So when it comes to essentially integrating lifestyle practices, I personally, when I work with people, I've identified 6 major areas that we address, and some of them are addressed deeper. Some of them, again, depending on the person, I really cater it to a particular human. But it's sleep, stress management, nutrition, movement, environment, and mindset. So those 6 areas, they encapsulate a lot of things beyond it.
What were those 6? Just repeat that again. Just break that down. What were those 6?
So first of all is sleep. And then we have stress management, and we have nutrition, movement, environment, and mindset.
Yep. Perfect.
Yeah. So those 6 with, again, I don't know how deep we should get into each one of them, but yeah, let's take it any direction, really.
Yeah, well, I'd love to know first, which one of those 6 do you see as a common correlation in the popular, which is the one that's always overlooked or not really focused on, that if people did just do a little finger on it, it would probably help them a lot?
Definitely sleep. I mean, we spend close to 1/3 of our lives in bed, so might as well make it count, right? And a lot of us just kind of take sleep as something that we simply do, and it's something that simply happens. Even though, in order to get quality sleep, as in everything else in the world, quantity is not as important as quality. I remember, because I personally struggled with insomnia in my military days, and overcoming that and coming out on the other side of insomnia, I kind of know what it's like to be sleepless and not able to fall asleep, stay asleep, wake up tired. I would sleep 8, 9, 10 hours and still wake up feeling like absolute garbage. So learning that is hey, this is such a massive component. Actually, I have a little thing on my wrist right now, which I'm going to tell you about as well. It's a cool concept. I've been hacking my sleep for a while. I mean, I tracked it with Oura Ring and minimizing minimizing the amount spent in bed and maximizing the quality. That's
Yeah.
essentially a goal. If you add a few hours to your productive daily output, that's amazing. So one of the things when it comes to sleep is temperature and light. Those are two simple things that any single person could do. Just keeping your room temperature between 17 and 21 degrees Celsius. That would be between 60 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
And sleeping in that environment, that's the optimal temperature to sleep in. Another thing is blue light. Blue light is probably one of the most overlooked things. Blue light that we get from our phone, from LED lights, from fluorescent lights all around us, that actually disrupts our sleep patterns. That throws our hormonal balance off. Because when we're exposed to blue light, cortisol, which is known as stress hormone, right, is spiked up. And when cortisol is up, melatonin, which is necessary for sleep, is down. So in order for us to fall asleep, we need melatonin and not cortisol. So just blocking the blue light, putting on blue light blocking glasses, which run like $20. You can find them anywhere now these days. Putting those on, having software on your phone, and actually powering down half an hour before going to bed, not using your phone and not scrolling through Facebook, Instagram, not stimulating your brain. Because if we take it as a downtime, but really what our brain registers that as, it's a dopamine hit. It's essentially a stimulation to our brain. So those simple things, I'm telling you, if every person incorporated those, sleep problems would be pretty much solved.
Yeah, I always think sleep's the biggest one. I know when I'm looking at those ones, if my sleep goes, it impacts all of them. It impacts my mindset, it impacts sex drive, it impacts my ability to move, it impacts. I always notice I breathe from my chest. This is something I've really started noticing since I've been doing a lot of breath work, is my breathing pattern changes. And then I noticed when that happens, I get my little anxiety alarm comes up again, if that makes sense. I find it
Yeah.
very easy to be like, oh. And then
That's
nutrition.
something that that's something that I want to cover actually.
Let's
Breathing
jump into it.
into your stomach. Yeah, diaphragmatic breathing. That's something that I really, when it comes to entrepreneurs, they're so type A personalities. When you work with them, they tell me that they have anxiety. I ask them to breathe in, take a deep breath in, and I see it going all in their chest. So if you put one hand on your chest and one hand on your stomach, and then breathe in through your nose deeply, make sure that the hand that is under, that is on your belly, actually goes forward. And that's how you know that you're triggering that parasympathetic response. Since imagine when you're running, you're breathing into your chest. It's heavy breathing. It's triggering that stressful response in your body. So you don't want that throughout the day, because it's going to be exhausting. Learning how to just breathe into your stomach, which is called diaphragmatic breathing, is one of the simplest things that one can do, and is going to be a game changer.
I love this because the biggest correlation, we've had a lot of big performers, experts, authority, XYZ, like in a multitude of different areas, like even through to relationships. And when it comes down to connecting back to self, it's always connect to breath. It's like the immediate thing. If you're anxious, regain control of your breath. Do you know what I mean? When you're angry, re-control back of the breath. Like in peak performance, like on the starting line, again, reconnect to the breath to get into the state. So it's amazing. Again, another person, another interview, the correlative thread through all of these connect back to breath.
For sure. So you mentioned the nutrition, and that's sleep and nutrition are very closely linked. That's a beautiful thing, because actually, if you're sleep deprived just for one night, you wake up, your blood glucose levels are pretty much in the pre-diabetic levels. How scary is that? Like you essentially have almost pre-diabetes because you were sleep deprived for one night.
I
That's
was going
why
to say
you probably
that
noticed.
correlates really well as well, because I was just about to say that before we jumped into the breath thing. Like the pattern I noticed there is I will be more prone to go for higher calorific sugars. on those days when I've,
Exactly.
you know,
Exactly. Yeah, we went to binge. We went to level our blood sugar out. We don't have any willpower because our brain is telling us, yeah, we're exhausted. Just get me something to level my blood sugar, and it's scary when you think about it. It's just we're so interconnected with nature still, rather than, I mean, we're not complicated. We're still animals, and once you kind of realize that we're still animals, and there are certain areas, that certain check boxes, if you tick them, you're not gonna your biology is not going to step in your way to you doing things that you actually want to do. So you're not a
yeah.
slave to your biology, and your body is actually working for you, not against you.
Yeah, I
So when
think like a thing with this as well is we get like obviously from the age of say like 0 to 7, we're sponges. We learn through a multitude of different ways, don't we? But like from 7 upwards into adulthood, it becomes habitual and repeated patterns.
right,
So
right,
we are
yeah,
hardwired. Like even
yeah.
even through to the emotional eater. Like if you were a kid and every time you were upset or cried, your mother used to give you a chocolate bar. Does that pattern still throw itself over into later life, where if you're stressed, you pick up a glass of wine?
Yep. Yep. No, that's
So,
for sure. That's for sure. It's just like it's interesting because throughout our childhood, we're driven by impulses, and
yeah.
now we are driven by habits, and we are ultimately slaves to our habits. And it depends whether we have good habit patterns or bad habit patterns. If you're a slave to good habits, I mean, you're living life,
Yeah.
and vice versa. It's not. Yeah, it's not so much.
See, this is the thing that really got me. Like we built a couple of businesses in the fitness world, and I remember like when I really started going into the whole psychology and looking at this sort of stuff, I used to get so annoyed at when I saw trainers or coaches going mad. Like it's so simple, just change your habits. And I'm like, look, if someone's done this for 40, 50 years of their life and it is ingrained, like literally to cellular DNA level, like this habit is literally them. It's not that easy just for someone to change it, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. It isn't. It really isn't. Quitting things cold turkey. It, I do actually do not. When it comes to nutrition, especially, it's not a thing. You cannot do that. If you're going on a diet, you're always going to rebound. That's just what are the numbers? I think 94% of people gain their weight back that they've lost after embarking on a given diet. If you don't have the fundamentals covered, you're always going to go back to your normal, right?
It's
It
like a
just how we
roller
work.
coaster, isn't it?
Yep,
It's like a
yep,
roller
yep.
coaster because it's like, oh, I'm getting what I want. I'm feeling happier, more confident. And it's like, no, 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 no. And then again, I'm going to go. And then 4 years down the line, you've actually not made
Yeah.
any progress. You've just linearly rode that
Mhm.
roller coaster.
Yeah,
So I love
precisely.
that. Just address the foundations. Now, AJ, look, like if we're looking at these 6 as the foundations, and I really want to make this like impactful for the people who are listening, because I'm presuming this sort of conversation will be quite new to a lot of people. Would you say a great place to start for anyone who's looking in right now is to maybe take a look at those 6 areas and rate themselves? Like, how good are you within that? Is there an awareness tool that you can speak about that can help our audience kind of realize what's working, what's not, and maybe start them off on this journey of self discovery and looking after their own health or becoming more of an optimal human?
For sure. For sure. That's a great question, actually. And first of all, yes, evaluating yourself, just giving yourself a score from 1 to 10, realizing, hey, if I'm sleeping 8 hours, am I actually waking up rested? Am I doing anything to improve my sleep? If you're not doing anything, you're probably going to be somewhere around 5, realistically. If you're applying biohacks, if you're blocking blue light, if you have an evening routine or go to bed routine, uh, if you're rising with the sun, preferably, because we're animals. That's about as close to 10 as it gets. But realistically, most of the population are at 5 because they don't really realize that, hey, I can do something more. So that's, as you said, the awareness tool is knowing that, hey, there's more to it than what we're used to, knowing that these practices, simple, small practices, can really be game changers. So in sleep, that would be it. In stress management, It would be breath work. Do I know how to breathe diaphragmatically? Do I have any breath work practices like 4-7-8 breath, box breathing, 1-to-1 ratio or 1-to-2 ratio, inhale to exhale, simple things like that. Meditation, unplugging. Do I do any of that? If I don't, I'm probably around 3, 3 to 4. So that's a good indicator. When it comes to nutrition, am I grabbing something? Am I eating within 2 to 3 hours before my bedtime? Which is probably one of the worst things that one can do, really, because our bodies are in digestive mode rather than get ready for sleep mode. You don't want that. You have that accumulated energy that you're not going to utilize, right? Uh, am I eating within 2 to 3 hours before bedtime? Am I fasting at least 13 hours after my last meal? So if I'm having dinner at 6, if I finish my dinner at 6, I'm not going to eat until 7 the next day. Something along those lines, at least 13 hours. Am I eating whole foods, unprocessed, unpackaged food mainly, at least 80% of the time? So knowing that and evaluating yourself on that, and just kind of, again, where do you fall on that spectrum? When it comes to movement, you can see that I'm fidgeting. I don't know if this is a video podcast,
my
but
bad.
yeah, yeah, I'm fidgeting. I'm standing up. I'm always like, I have a standing workstation, and so instead of working out and crushing a hard workout, I like the minimalistic approach to it. Like, our bodies are not made to crush a CrossFit workout on a daily basis. Our bodies are designed to move. So are you moving? Are you actually utilizing your body? Seated position is probably one of the worst positions that you can spend your time in. So do you take breaks every hour at least for 2 to 5 minutes to kind of move your body, walk around and stretch maybe? Do
It's
I
amazing as
exert
well. I
myself?
just to
Yeah.
touch up on that is I noticed last year, actually no, it was the year before, when we were at WeWork with the officers, is when I sit down to work, I am more fidgety. Do you know what I mean? I find it harder to get into the state of work. Whereas now that I've got stand-up desks, stand-up offices, because my body could, does that make sense? Because it can move. I seem to be a lot more focused. I don't know if the position
No,
controls the state, if that makes sense.
the position does control the state. That's one of the things. And another thing,
Yeah.
when we're moving, our blood is flowing. We're naturally, actually, the studies have shown that if you're moving, you're way more productive, and your mental output is significantly higher than as compared to sitting. Actually, since I'm not home right now, unfortunately, I don't have my treadmill workstation. I have like a little pad underneath
Oh,
my
you're
desk.
joking? Have you got
Yeah,
one of
yeah,
those? That's
yeah,
incredible.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's the new
Like a
investment
little
for me then.
walking pad, and yeah, when I'm taking my calls, I'm on that thing, or somewhere in nature, just talking to people. Yeah.
Do you know what I love as well is I'm absolute me in the morning. I'll have a coffee and I'll just people watch. Now I love watching someone change. So they sat there having the coffee, the phone rings. When they're on the phone, they become more fidgety. The majority of people stand up, go outside the coffee shop, and you see them walk in laps. And just what I was thinking of then is actually when you see that in practice, a lot of the time, like if we're sensory cued, where it's just one thing, such as hearing, the body kind of wants to go and it just leads its path, doesn't it? So many
That's
people
true.
can't just sit still on a phone.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, that is interesting, actually. I never. Oh, that's a good catch. I never thought of that.
Yeah,
That's
it's
cool.
insane. Like
Yeah,
even they do the
yeah,
hand gestures, they'll be up, they'll be moving. It's like the senses want to, do you know what I mean? Go and express as well as, yeah, I just think it's something fascinating. It's something I need to look into on that.
mm.
I just love watching
Walking
how people
meetings.
change. Yeah, walking
Yeah,
meetings.
yeah, that's probably one of the funnest things. So people who work in a corporate environment, instead of going into an office space, yeah, go outside, man. It's so good to go for a walk with your colleague and actually catch up on things. That's so much more productive, and you can utilize movement. You can utilize, actually, your mental acuity, that is higher when you're walking. So it's, yeah, so many benefits.
Yeah. So AJ, look, I want to kind of be a little bit selfish here, and I think
For
for
sure.
me doing this will help a lot more people because I think this will be a big issue. So
Mm.
for me, we obviously do a lot. We've got a lot of businesses which we run, and then we help people within them. For me, I think I love to show up optimal, and I will give my all, even if deep down at some level I'm struggling. I'll still show up the best that I can for a person. Now, for me, I've always found that sleep, and this is something that really intrigued and it piqued up to me when you were talking about it. So I'd love to know more about that. Like, if you were to look at someone's sleep, and we can talk more on this topic, I know from a lot of people who we work with, I know from a lot of speaking gigs that their sleep is not great. And I'll be really honest, I find it very rare where I actually speak to someone who does have good sleep these days or wakes up with energy. Because I personally believe that sleep goes beyond sleep. I think it's like what you wake up energy pattern wise with as well. Um, I'd love to know from your arena of your work, because you said something was quite intriguing before, which was you're focusing on getting less sleep but optimizing the depth.
Yep.
So for me, if I could do something similar, such as that, where would I start? How would I improve my sleep? What are the things that you see are the issues? Obviously, the glucose, which is a big one. Like, how do we really kind of like fine tune that initial pillar, which can mean that we can show up, we can do more, we've got more energy for the things that matter?
Great question. Well, let's dive right in, I guess. The simple things that I mentioned before, like one of the biggest ones is the light. So blocking, we are human animals, right? We are operating best when we're in cycle, in tune with nature.
Yeah,
Nature is
I agree.
always moving in cycles. So rising with the sun and blocking the blue light when the sun sets. I mean, it's easier for us. We live close to the equator, and we're spoiled. It's way easier for us to be exposed to sun when it's 350 days a year. We can
Yeah,
get that.
I was living in Manchester, which is a city in England. I was
Oh
like, when
my
you
man,
wanted some
yeah.
sunlight, you had to like
Yeah.
find the piece of light next to a skyscraper, just like, and then hope there
Yeah,
was
well,
grass there as well.
yeah, and that's one of the things, man. Getting yourself exposed to that morning light first thing in the morning, actually stepping outside and getting some sunlight is actually going to optimize your sleep, because your natural body's response, your natural internal body clock, circadian clock, is triggered by the light. So when you're waking up, we have sensors in our eyes, we have sensors in our skin, that essentially we expose ourselves, even if it's a cloudy day, we step outside and kind of spend some time looking into the sky. That registers, our brain registers that, hey, this is time to wake now.
Yeah,
And
game face.
when we block when we block the light, if you have a chance to watch sunset, that's amazing. And if you can, simply blocking all blue light sources when the sun sets, that's probably one of the biggest things, man. That's probably one of the biggest pillars that every single person overlooks.
I've just connected the dots on something here. So even in the cities, I would try and get to the top of a skyscraper to see the sunset. No matter where I am in the world, it's just
Mhm.
something that I'm always drawn towards doing. And I've never thought of this, but now that we've just had this conversation, I have, is like even just within the 10, 15, 20 minutes of seeing the sunset and being immersed in that light, you feel very clear, like peaceful, clear. I get like a lot of creative thoughts, like even if I'm just on my own, like it seems to be a very good period of just stillness. And I don't know if there's something behind that. Is it just like we naturally connect with nature, or what is it
Yep.
where
Yep.
it just brings us, it, it's like an awakened meditation. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I'm totally with you. I make sure to expose myself to that light when the sun sets. It just gives me that piece of calmness and just relaxation. I do some breath work during it, and it kind of gives me like this depth, the different perception completely. So exposing, yeah, we are animals. We live with nature cycles. It's as simple as that. So simply doing that, actually having a checkbox, like, hey, I'm gonna expose myself to the evening light today before I, or morning and evening light preferably. That's what signals your brain to adapt to those rhythms, and that's the beauty of it.
Instead of
It's
reaching
so
for the coffee pot.
right, exactly, because coffee
Forcing
pot,
it.
that's actually an interesting thing, because when it comes to coffee, so it doesn't really give us energy, it just suppresses the pathways in our brain that actually signal our body that we are tired. And when you're doing that first thing in the morning, instead of, so the best thing when it comes to waking up, I always say that our sleep starts the moment you wake up. So when you
Yeah.
wake up, getting exposed to the morning light, hydrating, getting
I
some
like that.
movement in, yeah, getting some movement in, like a little checklist that I have in my mind, which is automated at this point. But hydration, stepping outside, movement, and some sort of a reflection, mindset training, whatever, meditation, whatever it is, that spiritual practice, if you will. Yeah.
Yeah.
So those four things are kind of non-negotiables, and then you know that you're going to start your day on the right foot.
Yeah, I was going to say I've fallen, like I'm a massive coffee lover, like absolute coffee lover, and I know that it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think that too much of a good thing does become a bad thing. And I know for me, like one of the biggest things I've noticed over the past 4 years or so is at some points it really did become a crutch. Like, and I think of like moments of chronic stress in my life, or when deals or something's been going through. It's been like, look, wake up in the morning, bang, 2 hours later, Starbucks. Then I get into the habit of, after every meeting, I'm either at the coffee machine or someone passes me one. So then it's those through the day. And I came to the realization, like, well, at one point, I think I was going through like 6, 7 coffees a day.
Oh wow,
And I was like,
that's quite.
holy, you don't realize, do you? Like how much it can become a crutch. It suppresses the fact that you're tired. I don't know, like the caffeine obviously tunes you in a little bit more to some degree, but then the effect of that is your sleep's gone. And it's a dangerous cycle, because you're then waking up again with low energy. And I think for me that was a really fun loop to break. Really fun
Right.
loop to break.
And it's an external source of energy, really, when you think about it. Like when you trigger that in the morning with some movement, with hydration, with stepping outside, that's a natural wake up cycle. Then you can actually introduce that coffee to pick yourself up even more later on in the day. The best time to drink coffee or any stimulating drinks, whether it's tea or what have you, it's within 2-3 hours after waking up, because then your body is getting the signal of waking up from like a natural, from within rather than from the outside source. And so
Oh,
as you
I
said,
love that. Wake up
it's
from
not a
within.
crutch anymore. Yeah, it's not a crutch anymore. And I recommend for people who do like coffee, which I myself love coffee. I take last 5 days of every month, I take completely off coffee to reset my caffeine addiction, really.
That
And
was something that I had to do. That was a coffee detox. And I can remember the first time I did it. What amazed me was, number one is how shit I felt for 3 days or so whilst my
yep.
body adapted. But then what I really realized and I noticed was like, what actual it's a different feeling. Real energy is cleaner. It
Right.
more long lasting. I can't explain it. You feel more like, how do you explain it? You feel more. I can't explain it. You just feel more. And
Right.
the biggest thing I can say on that is, I think let's just say, coffee addicted to the point where I actually had no idea of what actually feeling naturally energetic felt like.
And
Yeah.
that's an interesting thing, man, because I mean, stimulation is great. It's by all means, I do indulge in certain stimulants, like nicotine is a big one for me. Not
Noose.
without, no, actually, it's simply nicotine gum,
Oh, nice.
because yeah, nicotine has been shown to be one of the most neuroprotective compounds. Now they're doing studies on Alzheimer's to kind of adjust Alzheimer's with nicotine, because when it comes to, without obviously the tobacco, nicotine is actually one of the cleanest sources of energy, cleanest burning sources of energy. Has a short half life. It's out of your system pretty quickly, and it's pretty clean burning energy. when it comes to caffeine, that's what I actually reminded me of is cutting any coffee or any caffeine out past 2 p.m. That's because for our
Mm.
bodies to metabolize caffeine, even if you're a fast caffeine metabolizer, half-life of it, so it means that half of the substance is out of your system. It's like 6 or 8 hours for caffeine. So you don't want that in your system past 2 p.m. That's a
Yeah,
big that's a biggie.
it's always like when you go for the evening meal, like when I'm in the cities or something, I have like my evening meetings, or I'm catching up with people through like business or whatnot, and you go for the meal
Mhm.
at the end and they give you that bloody espresso. And as soon
Oh
as you
man,
have that, you're like, why have I
yeah,
done what
that's
happened?
crazy to me. That's really crazy to me. It's like I know that's one of the Italian uh, things to do. That's where
It
it
just
stems from.
comes. You don't even order it. It's like, hey,
Right.
drink this,
Yeah.
ruin your night.
Yeah. 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 Sweet dreams.
Yeah, good luck.
And people say that, hey, I sleep fine. I sleep fine. Yeah, sure. But are you tracking it? That's the thing. It disrupts food, alcohol, caffeine, disrupts our deep sleep patterns. So our body doesn't get into the restorative stages of sleep up until very, very late at night, which obviously you're cutting yourself short by doing that.
Definitely. Look, AJ, I think the thing that I really love about this conversation is like people, we don't know. Like if we've lived for a certain way, we don't know. We don't know what real energy is. We don't know what
Mhm.
actual great sleep is. And the thing that I love about this is it's just like it's opening people up to maybe find like wake up within. Like, are you actually showing up for the world your best, or are you like forcing your way through the day? Like with
Mhm.
coffee, with crap food, like are you having to shut yourself down at night with a glass of alcohol? I've been guilty of that. So like it's pretty amazing, isn't it? Like just really getting people to look in. We've got everything that we need. We've got the right things around us, and it really is on our shoulders, like to show up as the best version of ourselves for the people who are close to us, for the
Mhm.
things that matter. And this is what I love about this conversation.
It's like you don't know how good you feel until you do.
But you've got to be open minded enough to try these things. That's where the catch 20
Precisely, because
is.
we're always. I mean, I can say like I genuinely think that, hey, pretty I've become a pretty optimized version of a human in terms of just all of those check boxes based on research, based on science, based on the way I feel. But the thing is, like, I never stop looking. I never stop looking. Not to find that one magic pill, that magical solution, silver bullet, whatever you want to call it. Not for that. Just because out of curiosity, because we can always get ourselves to the next level. Why do millionaires turn billionaires? Because I
Yep.
mean, it's not like being a millionaire is not enough. It's just because you're creating more value to yourself and to others by up leveling. So that's essentially wanting to take everything, whatever you do, to the next level. Yeah, that's what I advocate.
No, I love it. I love it. I think the fun thing is, AJ, this is probably going to be one of many conversations that we have. I think we've dived into a lot of sleep, energy, how it all starts and ends with you at the end of the day. Like it's your responsibility to do this stuff. I think that's a really big thing here because you can't go, I know this, you can't go into a business meeting with no energy, with poor sleep.
Right.
You
Mhm.
can't impact this is the way I see it these days, and it's took me a while to get here. Like I do these things and these practices now so that I show up and I'm an advocate for the things. Do you know what I mean? Like I am showing up as literally the best. I feel like I'm doing a disservice if I don't do them to
Right.
the relationship. Like I'm in a new relationship. If I don't have the energy after a day in work to spend time with her, then I'm doing a disservice to her. It's not going to last. Same
Mhm.
with the team. If I'm coming into a team and I'm trying to inspire them, but the energy's not there, or do you know what I mean? You're not connecting with them properly. That's then going to suffer. So it's amazing how really just taking responsibility of all of these areas that make us the best version of us, like can actually ripple out and impact life on the greater scale. And that's what I love
I,
about this stuff.
I just love that you said that, because that kind of brings me back to the point of, if it's not bigger than yourself, it's not big enough. So
Totally.
whatever it is that you need to motivate you to step outside of just your personal needs,
Yeah.
finding someone, whether it's your family member or a charity that you want to sacrifice yourself for. Like fulfillment comes from service, really.
Exactly. Exactly. I was going to say, you see this a lot as well, like in challenges, or like, I know in the past I've done some stupid world challenges and stuff, but when if it's for me, if it's just for me on my own as an individual, it's very easy to give up. Whereas if
Yeah,
I know I'm doing it for like a mental health charity or to raise money for a school in Africa, like they need me. And that's where it's a no brainer. Like
yeah.
if it's for someone else. I was interviewed the other day actually, and it's kind of funny. Someone said to me the other day, they're like, "What are the things that you're scared of?" I was like, "Look, I'm not scared of dying. Like I've got over that. That's fine. That's going to happen. I've made peace with this." But what I'm really scared of the most is like, because I do so much for other people, it's like letting them down. But at the same time, like that's the biggest fear. But it's at the same time, it's the biggest inspiration in my life, because I get up because I want to help them more. Like, how can I help these people further? So I love that you said that. It's like when you are serving other people, when you put that outside of yourself to help other people, it becomes more of an inspiration more than a fearful push.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that. And I don't know who said this, but probably I actually really resonate with it, because that's the way I personally live my life. Is just I don't want to the day I die. I don't want to meet the person that I could have been,
Oh,
and it
deep.
didn't. Yeah, I know. It's just every time when I don't stand up, for example, if I don't stand up for people's bad habits, if I don't call them out, it's uncomfortable for me to call them out and tell them that, hey, you're not being in a place of integrity. If I don't call them out, I'm actually doing not just doing the service to them, but to myself as well. Because at the end of my life, it's like, hey, I because I wanted to be comfortable, I did not speak up at that moment. And because of me, really, those people 20 years from now are going to be in the exact same place, exact same spot that they were when I met them. Yeah.
AJ, I absolutely love it. Me and you share something here. A lot of the time when you speak to people, like, who's your inspiration? And I've spoke about this to a lot of people, and they externalize it.
Mm.
And I always think, like, in doing that, I think it's great because you see some values from other people, which you know are inside of yourself that you might not be tapping into. That's great. But
Right.
you've just said something there. That's the same drive. And this is why I think this is so deep. When your motivation is you on your deathbed with what you could have brought to this world, what you know you should have done, XYZ, you're always every day closing the gap on yourself. Your own goal for life is yours. It's not external focused. I think that's such a
Right.
powerful thing which you brought up. Again, completely off topic of this conversation, but I think that's a beautiful thing what you just said. Is when you're your own competition, you know what you're working towards, you know who you need to be, what that end final act of service, who's around you.
And that it has to there has to be no end. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
Like there's
And it can always
always the
evolve.
next level. Yeah, there's always in the next level.
Because as you become more confident as well, you can be like, no, this guy on his final days could have done more. He could have, do you know what I mean? Maybe wrote a book that sold all over the world. He could have, do you know what I mean?
For
Built
sure, for
something.
sure.
Yeah, it's incredible. I love
It's
it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's great. It's great.
So AJ, look, if I was to give you a device and you could give a message to every single person in the world about what you do, who you are, even through your own story, you can give people one message to either biohack themselves, take control of their lives, or look after themselves, whatever message you would speak to the entire population of the world, given this ridiculous, chaotic time which we're in, what message would you give?
I would say follow your curiosity to the next level. That would be yeah, this that simple.
I love it. I love it. And AJ, like we always wrap up on a couple of these questions. Now, if you could be the man who you stand as you are today, knowing what you know, having traveled the world, been and done what you have done, if you could go back into the younger days in Lithuania, where obviously it's quite closed, and you could give him some advice, what would you say to him for life?
Mm. Don't conform.
Oh,
Yeah, that's it.
Can,
That's it.
can we go into that? I'd love that, because
No,
no
for
one's
sure.
ever said that. No one's ever said don't conform, and that's kind of like a big thing for me as well. I'm not the normal person, so with this, because obviously Lithuania, I personally, from an outsider looking in and having been there, I can see like conform. You kind of told that this is the right path for you and all that sort of stuff. So I'd love to speak to you. Like, is this something where you were kind of put onto that path of trying to conform and it just never felt right?
Yeah,
Why is that?
that's precisely it. That I always try to find myself in one discipline. I try to find myself in one thing that I should be best at. And I felt bad about myself, because I liked everything. I liked a little bit of everything, and I was curious about multiple things. And that I don't have to master one thing. I can actually master multiple things, and I don't have to be put on a path by society and the societal pressures and that the external. So that conformity is essentially just conforming to the external pressure, conforming to something that is not within. So don't conform, follow what is within you, and you're gonna find your path.
I love that. I always say you can never fit into a box that's not meant for you. No matter how hard you try, you will just never fit in. And I think the majority of the time, it's a case of either going out there, discovering your own box, or fucking building your own box.
Yeah, I like the building my own box thing.
Yeah,
it's not that you're gonna find your path. You're gonna find multiple of them, and you're gonna explore all of them. And you can. We do have time. We really do have time.
That's the beautiful thing. Like the amount of things I failed at, like business, like the entire works is you can go and try something, it can fall to the floor. You take the wisdom and the lessons from it. Maybe you have to stand up a little bit and ruffle yourself up.
Yeah.
But you can go again. You can go again. So,
right.
Like that's the perception of time. It's such a big thing. Such a big thing.
Yeah. That's great, man. We dove into something that, it's very thought provoking. It's interesting to reflect on certain things, and I'm really enjoying this conversation.
There'll be more. We'll get you on here more.
Yeah.
And AJ, final little thing which you always like to wrap up on. I think this has been a great start for our show and for our audience, which is vastly building all over the world, into the look in this. So obviously the next conversations we can layer up on this. AJ, final question, and this is a real big one. Like for you, I think you'll be able to really give a lot on this as well. Like, what does it mean to you, AJ, to live a nourished life? What does that mean to you?
Ooh, okay. Ooh, that's a juicy one. Living a nourished life is ultimately tapping into your full biological potential and letting your biology work for you while you're fulfilling your higher purpose. That would be
totally agree. Like if we're not taking control of ourselves, we can't do that. Like we can't have the best of everything external. Like if we're fucked, the relationship will die, the business will fail, the inspiring the team will not work. It really is all on us. Really, really is. That's the thing that I love about this. Yeah. AJ, look, again, it's been fun trying to get this to happen. Can't wait to meet you in person when all of this lifts, and obviously you can get back and use your passport again. But look,
hopefully a few weeks from now.
Yeah, June apparently. But look, I can't. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on here. I know it's been a bit fun with everything that's going on in the world, but look, I totally want to acknowledge you. I think obviously with your own personal story, like breaking convention is very hard. As Joe Dispenza always says, you can't read the label when you're inside of the jam jar. And I think for a lot of people, the hardest move to make in life is actually stepping out of the jam jar, or in fact, breaking the hell out of it. And obviously, I think it's incredible, like your own story. And I think you're living proof of something that we as an organization speak about is when you identify the things that light you up as an individual and you follow through on those, you can create the life that really is for you. And again, you're another person who's done that. and is clearly living it. So AJ, look, I love what you do. I love where you do it, clearly. I love who you're helping. I think it's amazing. And I really think that this message and what you do needs to get out there further. So I just want to say thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks, my man. I really appreciate that. That's touching. And thanks for having me.
Yeah, there'll be more.
Thanks a lot.